What's up and welcome back to the channel. If you're somebody who recently went out and bought an iPhone, and the main reason why you actually went out and bought this iPhone is its amazing camera capabilities, so today is your lucky day. Today is the day I'm going to be running through the entire camera application and giving you guys a complete beginner's walkthrough on every feature with relation to photography on the iPhone cameras. So I'm going to break this down for you so that you guys can go out and start shooting and using every feature that's packed into this tiny pocket device. Now, the iPhone that I'm using for this video is the iPhone 14 Pro, which is my daily driver iPhone. But if you have an older iPhone, don't worry, this video is still applicable to you because the software across all the iPhones is pretty much the same, and I'm basically breaking down the camera app, so don't worry, you're going to learn a lot. Keep watching and enjoy the video. What's up, you guys? One of the first things you're going to want to do when you get your iPhone is open up the camera app. Now, there's a couple of ways that you can actually do this, and I know this is super basic, but I know a lot of people just tap on the icon on their home screen, and that's their primary way to open up this camera app. Now, this is perfectly fine. You can get into the application by basically just using the camera icon. You can also keep your icon in the dock at the bottom of your screen or leave it on your home screen so you have easy access. But what a lot of people do not know is there's multiple ways to get quick access to your camera. You can either swipe up on your home screen without actually having to unlock it, and you're going to be in your camera app, giving you the opportunity to take shots every time you're out. You can also just long press on the camera icon on your home screen and you can jump straight into the camera app without having any issues and without having to fiddle around with any other settings on your phone. Now, the white circle at the bottom of your screen is essentially your shutter button. You use this button in your photo mode to take photos, and you also use it in video mode to take video. Now, it doesn't really matter if you're not in video mode. You can also use this shutter button to take videos by long pressing it when you're in the photo mode. What you got to do is click the shutter button, hold it down, and your iPhone will automatically start recording videos. You can use this for stories. You can also use this to capture quick clips instead of shifting modes from photo and video, and you essentially never miss a moment. This is something that's super cool for anyone who wants to create content on the go using just their phone. Now, while the shutter button is super cool and you can definitely use it up 90% of the time that you're using your iPhone, also use the volume buttons on your iPhone, record photos, videos, and time lapses, which makes it super easy because there's a lot of times where you can't tap your screen. For example, if your iPhone's on a tripod and you want a really stable shot, it's easier to have additional shutter buttons to give you the flexibility to record your photos and videos, making sure you never miss a moment. Also, when you're shooting in landscape mode or horizontal mode, I find this a lot more convenient than tapping my shutter button because the volume buttons are right there where my finger sits, so it's just perfect. There's also a setting on the iPhone that lets you use your volume up button to take burst photographs. What you want to do is go into your settings, go into your camera setting, and once you're there, you want to toggle on use volume up for burst. When you do this, you're going to essentially be able to get different controls for your volume up and down buttons while using your camera app. Now, once you're in your camera app, you can look at your volume buttons, and both of them have separate controls, which are really cool in my opinion. You can use the volume up button now to take burst photographs, which is really good in high-paced action moments to capture the scene, and you can use the volume down button, which is essentially the same as your shutter button, which can be used to record photos as well as record videos when you're on the go. Now, as we know, the standard shutter button can be long pressed to record quick videos, but what we also need to keep in mind is that if you hold the shutter button down and swipe to the right, it's going to go into instant video mode where you can let go of your phone. It's going to continue to record videos and give you a lot more flexibility. You can go in and manually stop the video whenever you want. What you can also do is you can tap the little shutter button on the right hand side now and take photographs and videos at the same time, making this super convenient for anyone who's using their iPhone as their main camera, so that you can be a hybrid shooter with your iPhone, essentially shooting photos and videos all at the same time, like you guys can see I just did right now. Also, another quick tip is if you push down the shutter button and swipe to the left, not the right, the left, your phone will instantly start shooting burst photographs. So all you gotta do is tap and pull to the left and your phone's gonna start shooting a whole wide range of burst photographs, which I think is really awesome. So if you pull to the right, you get to shoot video. If you pull to the left, you get to shoot burst photographs, making it super convenient, and you just need that one shutter button. That one shutter button can basically do everything for you. But you have to keep in mind that if you have the newer iPhone, especially the 14 Pros, if you're in RAW mode, in the 48 megapixel mode, you're not going to be able to shoot burst photos because I think it just takes too much processing power. So keep in mind the burst mode on the 14 Pros is only going to work in JPEGs, but on older iPhones it probably works in all formats, RAW and JPEG. Let's quickly look at the lenses that you have. Specifically on the iPhone 14, you have the ultra wide 2x telephoto, you have the 3x telephoto, and you have the 1x lens. Now, depending on the iPhone that you have, you may have 1 or 4 lenses, depends on what you got. This is the phone that I'm rocking, this is what I have. The 1x lens is a 24mm wide lens. It is also a 48 megapixel sensor under this lens, which makes it the best lens when you're talking about image quality. quality. It is truly a fantastic lens for photography as well as video. It's not too wide, it's not too tight. It is a really nice focal length. I really enjoy shooting on the 1x quite a bit. But yeah, this is the lens that most people pretty much default to, and it doesn't matter what camera app you have, it's very similar on all of them. So the next lens on the list is the 0.5, which is the ultra wide lens. It is the widest lens that you can get on this iPhone, and it is my favorite lens to shoot on. It's about 13mm in focal length. It does struggle a little bit in low light, but Apple has been improving it over the years. It's a fantastic lens when it comes down to shooting architecture, landscape, group photographs, and even vlogging. It is a brilliant lens on the overall. You can see the difference between the ultra wide and the wide. You get so much more in the frame when you're using this lens, and I absolutely love shooting with this lens at all times. It makes everything so much bigger and changes your perspective completely. The 2x lens makes its big comeback this year with the iPhone 14 series. Now, if you have an older iPhone like the iPhone 12 or the iPhone 11, you probably have a 2x lens. But the 2x lens on the 14 series is a little special because it's basically just cropping in on the 1x 48 megapixel sensor to give you additional zoom. I think it's really nice. I really enjoy shooting on this focal length. It's around 50 or 48 millimeters, and it's pretty great. The next lens on the list is the maximum zoom lens that we have when it comes to optical zoom on the iPhone, which is the 3x lens, which is now available on the 14 series. This lens is pretty good. It's at about 77 millimeters, and it's great for portraits, street, and getting up close detail shots. Now, you can also zoom on the iPhone camera by basically pinching to zoom on your screen. This is going to be digital zoom because you're not really going to be selecting any of the particular lenses that you have on your screen, but it's a possibility. You can also tap the zoom icon and get this zoom wheel, which lets you basically zoom digitally between the various focal lengths that your lenses are at. It's pretty cool, gives you a little bit more precision to zoom. What you have to keep in mind is the fact that all of the zooming that you're doing between the various lenses is going to be digital zoom, so it's not going to render the best quality. Now, that being said, you can digitally zoom up to 15x on the 14 Pro model, and a little bit lesser depending on which iPhone you have on previous models, but the fact that you can actually digitally zoom to 15x is really great. If you want the best quality, I would suggest just going between the 0.5, 1, 2 and 3x options, because this is going to be optical zoom and not digital, and well, basically the overall quality that you're going to get is going to be the absolute best when you do this. Let's quickly take a look at all the controls that are baked into the camera app on the iPhone. On the top left hand side, we have our flash icon, which basically lets you trigger on, off, or leave the flash in automated mode. Next to it, you have a little number with a small line below it. That's your exposure compensation. As you can basically see, when you tap it, you get this exposure dial at the bottom, which basically lets you increase or decrease the exposure pretty easily. You could also adjust it from the top in earlier iPhones, but I think this has changed now, and that's not a very great thing. Next is RAW on the right hand side. If you switch off RAW, you're shooting in JPEG mode. If you switch on RAW, you're shooting in RAW mode, taking full advantage of that 48 megapixel sensor and getting maximum data. When you switch off RAW, you also end up seeing the fact that live photos appear. Photographic styles is another option that you get between live photos and RAW when you're shooting in that mode. It's pretty cool. Now, live photos, as you can see, when you shoot a live photo, it basically records a little video clip for a few seconds before and after the shutter is pressed, giving you a ton of information, which I think is really cool. You can also get into long exposure, create boomerangs, create bounces and loops using live photos, which gives you a ton of flexibility to get really creative with your photography. It's a great way to capture photo and video together, in my opinion. I really like it. I don't use it a great deal, but yeah, it's there if you need it. Of course, as you can see, once you switch on and off RAW, everything changes. Shooting in RAW is really essential for me, but I'm not going to run over that just yet. We're going to look at that in a little bit. As you can see, there's an arrow on the center of your screen. When you tap on that arrow, you're going to get this little control line, this set of controls at the bottom of your camera app, right below the lenses. This basically has a bunch of different controls, like your flash. Yet again, it's the same thing that you have on top. You have your live photo on, off, or auto option here, which basically gives you control over whether you want to shoot in live or not. I normally keep live off because I'm primarily always shooting in RAW. You can choose your aspect ratio between 4.3, 16:9, square. I mean, there's a ton of aspect ratios over here, which is really good. The iPhone didn't have a lot of these controls in the past, and the very fact that we've got them over the last few years is really great. Your exposure dial is also here, the same thing that you have on the top left hand side of your screen, making it super convenient for you to dial in and out of the exposure. So we should look at the timer, which is something that's super cool. If you want to take group photos, you can just set up a timer. The iPhone flash is going to count you down and take a picture. You can have 3 seconds or 10 seconds as you like, which is pretty cool. I normally leave this off because I don't take a large number of group photos with the timer on. And we also have the filters, which is at the end of this control strip, but to be completely honest, the filters are super old and I think Apple really needs to upgrade them. We do have photographic styles, which is something that came with the iPhone 13, where basically you can choose the way the JPEGs or the standard photographs look out of your iPhone. iPhone. You can choose to adjust the contrast, you can choose to adjust the vibrance, the saturation. Basically, you can dial in a look. Now, these are different to filters essentially because these colors are pretty much baked into your photograph, whereas a filter is something that you put onto a photograph after the photograph is originally taken. I really like photographic styles. I like the rich contrast look of photographic styles. Oh yeah, by the way, rich contrast is one of the styles that Apple has pre-made for you. There's a bunch of styles that you can choose from. I basically just go with rich contrast and leave it at that. Again, I don't shoot a great deal of JPEGs, but if you do need to shoot it, I would definitely suggest you dive into photographic style. This is also available on the iPhone SE, so that's pretty cool that we're not losing out on a great feature on that phone. Now, another great feature that's been carried forward from the iPhone 11 right up to the iPhone 14 is night mode. This originally came out as an automatic feature where it basically kicked in and kicked off when there was less light, and the iPhone would pretty much detect that using its sensors at the back of the back camera, which is pretty cool. It's an automatic feature which makes it really easy for most people to use. But as you can see, if you tap on the night mode icon, you also get a little control dial or line at the bottom of your screen below your lenses. This lets you adjust the exposure of the night mode, essentially adjusting the shutter speed and deciding how long you want to keep your shutter open for. This is going to help you adjust the exposure and get really creative with your shots. Now, another mode that came out with the iPhone 13 series was macro mode. This is only available on the 13 and the 14 series, and is definitely one of my preferred modes to shoot in because it really helps you get that extra detail. You want to go into your settings app, go into camera settings, scroll all the way down and find macro control. This is definitely something you want to turn on because it gives you a lot of control when you're using macro mode. Essentially, when you're using macro mode, your iPhone will default to use the ultra wide lens, which basically can focus to really close distances, reducing the minimum focus distance of your camera, helping you get really close to subjects. Like you guys can see right now, I can tap the little macro icon next to my lenses, and now I'm focusing on my Funko Pop, which is super close to my camera. And this essentially is macro mode. It lets you get super close to a subject and get really fine details. Now, what we switched on and off was that macro control, which I basically used right now. As you can see, macro control is off, out of focus, macro control on, in focus. And that's why I took you guys to the settings menu first, because that essential toggle is really important. If you don't switch that on, the iPhone's going to start using macro control by switching it on and off on its own and making the decision for you, making it super annoying when you're trying not to use macro mode. Yeah, I don't like that. I like having manual control on these things, and that's exactly why I wanted you guys to get this manual control as well. Yeah, so basically switch on macro control and use it to get really close to your subjects. Now, if you remember, we had seen the raw function on the screen before while we were going through the layout of the camera app. Now, if you don't see this on your phone, it's a possibility you don't have it, considering this has only been available for the last 2 generations of iPhones, and to top it all, it's also only available on the Pro models. If you have a Pro model and you don't see raw, you go into your settings, go into your camera settings, go into formats and choose Apple Pro RAW. You turn that on and you essentially should be able to see the RAW function on the top screen on your iPhone camera app. Now, another thing you want to do is, if you have the new iPhone 14 Pro series, you want to go back into your settings, go back to camera settings. Under camera settings, you want to go into formats. Once you're in formats, you want to make sure that you choose your resolution. You can choose between 12 megapixel RAWs or 48 megapixel RAWs, and the only way on this iPhone that you can get full 48 megapixels is if you're actually shooting in a 48 megapixel RAW format. Otherwise, every other image that you shoot on this camera, even though you have a 48 megapixel sensor, is going to be compressed and binned down to 12 megapixels. Now, once you turn on and off RAW, you can basically shoot in either RAW or JPEG mode. What's the difference between RAW and JPEG is what you're probably wondering next. RAW essentially gives you an uncompressed, unprocessed high data file, which basically means if you want to get a complete 48 megapixel image from your iPhone, you shoot in RAW. If you want to get a really good image from your iPhone, which is not necessarily 48 megapixels and you don't want that size, you shoot in JPEGs. JPEGs are basically processed images that your iPhone bakes colors into and bakes a particular look into, taking into account your live photos as well as your photographic styles, and gives you a final image that basically has the dynamic range and a particular look to it. If you shoot in a RAW format, you can basically take that photograph into any editing software that you want, make use of the 48 megapixel data that you have, make use of all that raw information, giving you a ton of flexibility if you really want to edit this image. Basically, you can invert the image and the way it looks if you shoot a RAW image. You can shoot in a 12 megapixel RAW if you have a lower storage variant on your iPhone. That should still give you a large amount of data over the JPEG. But if you do have a 48 megapixel iPhone and you do have a ton of storage on your phone, I would definitely recommend shooting 48 megapixel, because the kind of data that you get and the information that you can capture with this camera, especially considering it's a smartphone, is completely unreal. As you guys can see, I'm really pulling this image apart while editing it within the Photos app itself within the iPhone, where you shoot a 48 megapixel image and just edit it on the stock Photos app on your iPhone. Can give you really surprising results. So yeah, RAW is definitely my preferred way of shooting, considering I take my mobile photography really seriously, and if you have the storage, I would definitely recommend that you use this option. Look at a feature that came out way back. This is portrait mode. As you can see, we're in that mode right now on the iPhone camera. If you know what portrait mode is, it came out with the iPhone 10. It essentially allows you to add depth of field or background blur to any subject that you want to photograph by adjusting the aperture like we are right now on the screen. Now, of course, all of this is digital and it's not real aperture, but it is software based, and it's definitely gotten better over the years with Deep Fusion as well as with the photonic engine on the iPhones. Portrait mode will detect the subject as long as the subject is at an adequate distance, and as you can see, it blurs out the background for you. Now, it has definitely gotten a lot better with edge detection, which is something that it did suffer from initially, and it also is available on various lenses now depending on which iPhone that you have. So yeah, that is really cool. I like using portrait mode. It's a great gateway to taking actual portraits of people if you don't know anything about portrait photography. I don't use it a great ton because the standard photo mode or the standard camera on your iPhone, if you're in photo mode, gives you a good amount of depth of field because the sensors over the last few years have grown. Now, we're not going to get really technical about this. I would definitely recommend that you guys get into your cameras, get into your portrait modes and start messing around with the aperture settings. There's also a ton of cool lighting effects that you can use in portrait mode, which is really handy. It gives you different looks, and yeah, considering you have the flexibility of using multiple lenses now with portrait mode, I would definitely recommend that you do this because the compression and the look that you get is coming really close to a real camera. As you can see, the lighting effects is definitely something that's really cool that you cannot do on an original professional camera, although you can get this effect if you're editing in professional software such as Lightroom. Now, there's a ton of other video-based modes that you have within the iPhone camera app, but we're not going to be looking at that today. I am making a filmmaking guide for anyone who wants to become a better iPhone filmmaker, so definitely stay tuned for that video on this YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe, and I hope you get to learn a lot from these videos that I'm making. Today's video basically it helps you master the photography-based aspect of the iPhone camera app, and the last mode, which is related to photography within the app, is the panoramic mode. This is fantastic in my opinion for anybody who wants to primarily take this phone out and shoot landscapes. It gives you an ultra wide shot, making a really nice panoramic image, and it's super cool because this is software based. To get this kind of a panoramic image on a DSLR or a mirrorless camera, you're going to need a particular kind of lens, which is going to cost you a ton of money, plus you're going to need a pretty decent camera, and let's not forget the stabilization aspect because it's not so easy. On the iPhone, you can literally point, shoot and turn your camera around at the same time to create a beautiful panoramic image. That is the end of the iPhone photography masterclass. You guys have basically learned everything you need to know about the iPhone camera app with respect to photography, and that's what this video was about. It was a photography based tutorial. In case you guys enjoyed the video, definitely share this video with your friends who are new to the iPhone. I am a big enthusiast when it comes to mobile photography. In case you guys enjoyed this video, do give it a thumbs up because it takes a large amount of time to make these videos. And in case you guys want to know more about the camera app, about all the video based features, I have an iPhone filmmaking guide that's coming soon. So stay tuned to the channel. Don't forget to subscribe. So for anyone who was curious about this entire video was edited on the iPad Pro. That is literally my editing rig over there, and all the tutorial based video clips that you guys saw was filmed on the iPad Mini 6. Like, I basically put my iPhone down in front of me, filmed all the settings that I showed you guys today using the iPad Mini 6, airdropped all of those videos onto my iPad Pro, edited all of that on the iPad Pro using LumaFusion, connected a USB mic, and that is my little editing station. I do not have a YouTube studio, I just work from home. So yeah, a lot of people have been asking me how I make these videos. That's basically it. Stay tuned for more. Thanks for watching. Peace.